Welcome back to GH Updates, your go-to spot for all the drama, revelations, and explosive secrets from General Hospital. Buckle up, because the episode airing on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, is nothing short of a seismic shakeup in Port Charles. Let's break it all down. General Hospital will reveal Michael's anger escalated with every passing moment as he replayed Drew's words in his mind. Each recollection twisted the knife deeper into his heart, causing a mixture of pain and fury to rise within him. Drew, with his cunning and devious nature, had manipulated Way, twisting the truth in such a way that the young boy was Medetto believed that Michael no longer wanted him or Amelia. The cruel words Drew had spoken were not just lies. They were calculated attacks on Way's fragile emotions aimed at tearing apart the bond between father and son, as Drew coldly emphasized that Michael had only returned home for Sasha and Daisy. It not only wounded Way's spirit, but struck at Michael's very soul. To hear that his son believed such a thing felt like a betrayal, not on Libby Drew, but by Willow as well, that person he had trusted most in the world. Michael's heart ached with betrayal as he realized that the trust had placed in Drew and Willow had been shattered. It was a betrayal that cut to the core, the kind that could not easily be forgiven. His mind raced with fury, each thought consumed with the desire to protect Way from further harm. The more he thought about Drew's actions, the more his rage surged. Heckle no longer stand by and allow Drew to manipulate his son's emotions. He would do whatever it took to stop Drew from continuing his torment. It was no longer just a boot-protecting Way. It was about reclaiming the justice that Drew had stolen from him and his family. The anger that burned inside him was intense. A fire thought threatened to consume him. Michael knew that if he didn't act now, Drew would continue to destroy everything relevant. The situation had reached a boiling point, and there was no turning back. His mind was mad up. Drew could not and would not be allowed to destroy his family. Michael vowed that Drew would be held accountable for the damage he had done, not just because of his deceit, but because of the harm he had inflicted on the people Michael cared about most. It was time to make Drew face the consequences of his actions, and Michael was determined to do whatever it took to make sure the law would hold Drew responsible. As the court date loomed closer, Michael could feel the tension thick in the air. Everything had been meticulously planned, and he knew this was his. Chanchito finally proved that Drew had no place in the lives of his children. The stakes were high, and the pressure was mounting with every passing hour. But just as the court was about to deliver its judgment, an unexpected twist occurred. Way thievery child that Drew had so ruthlessly manipulated stood up to testify. The courtroom fell silent as Way, with boss innocence and bravery, began to recount everything Drew had said. It wasn't as if the air had been knocked out of the room. And in that moment, everything changed. Way, in his pure and candid way, shared the truth. He spoke with hesitation, detailing exactly what Drew had told him. That Michael no longer wanted him, that he only returned home for Sasha and Daisy, and that Way himself no longer mattered to his father. The words hung heavy in the room, each one striking like a painful blow to Michael's heart. To hear his own child say such things was unbearable, yet was also the undeniable evidence aside Drew's manipulation had been far worse than anyone could have imagined. This revelation was not just a blow to Michael's emotions. It was the key piece of evidence that proved Drew's malicious intentions. The room, once filled with tense anticipation, was now charged with a new energy. Everyone in that courtroom could feel the gravity of what Way had just shared. The truth had come to light in the most painful way possible, and there was no denying the damage Drew had caused. His lies had not only manipulated Way, but had attempted to destroy the bond between father and son. This was no longer a matter of simple family conflict. It was a matter of abuse and manipulation. As Michael looked at his son, standing there with courage, had never expected from a child so young, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over him. He felt an overwhelming sense of pride and relief that Way had found the strength to stand up for what was right. But it also deepened his rage at Drew, knowing that his own son had been the victim of such a cruel and calculated tempting of emotional abuse. Way had spoken the truth, and in doing so, he had not only helped his father, but had given him the chance to right the wrongs that Drew had inflicted on their family. The courtroom was now silent, the weight of Wise testimony pressing down on everyone present. Michael's heart raced as he realized it thought this was it. The moment when Drew's lies and manipulation would be exposed for the world to see. He no longer had to fight alone. With Lay's courage, that truth could not be silenced. Drew's facade was crumbling. The consequences of his actions were about to be delivered in full force. The courtroom was silent, but the tension in there was palpable. As Willough's testimony echoed through the room, there was no denying the weight of his words. The impact of what he had said struck everyone present with the force of a sledgehammer. Drew's manipulation, his deceitful actions, and his cruelty toward an innocent child were laid bare for all to see. It was as if the room itself had frozen in time, each person absorbing the magnitude of the truth that had just been revealed. The walls, once thick with doubt and uncertainty, now seemed to close in on Drew as his facade crumbled before the eyes of everyone in the courtroom. Wise's innocent voice, so clear and unwavering, made it impossible for anyone to ignore the truth. He had been a victim of emotional manipulation, his fragile heart toyed with by a man who was supposed to be a protector, but instead had become a tormentor. The words that Drew had shadowed him, telling him that his father no longer wanted him, that he was no longer important, rang out with chilling clarity. They weren't just hurtful, they were a calculated attack on the very fabric of family. Drew had preyed on Occup's vulnerability, twisting the truth to serve his own selfish desires. The truth was undeniable. Drew's actions, which had been hidden beneath layers of charm and manipulation, were now exposed for what they truly were: abusive, cruel, and without excuse. There was no room for ambiguity anymore. The court had no voice but to confront the horrific reality of what Drew had done. His treatment of Way wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was an act of emotional abuse that could not be justified under any circumstances, and with that truth came consequences that Drew could no longer avoid. As the judge began to speak, the finality of decision became clear. Drew would not be allowed to escape the consequences of his actions. The weight of his crimes, no matter how cleverly he had tried to hide them, was too heavy for him to bear. The law would not overlook what he had done, and neither would the court. It wasn't just a victory for Michael, it was a victory for justice, for the protection of children, and forth truth that had been so ruthlessly supports. Drew and Willow, who had stood by him, were now exposed as participants in a twisted game, their actions laid bare for all to see. No longer could they hide behind their lies. No longer could they pretend to be innocent. The truth had come out, and ye thought burned them both to the ground. As the judge passed his judgment, Michael felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. It wasn't that he had been seeking grooving. It wasn't about that. What he had wanted, what he needed, was for Drew to be held accountable, for Way to be heard, for the pain his son had endured to be acknowledged. Watching Drew face the consequences of his actions, Michael cowed feel the weight that had been on his shoulders for so long slowly lifting. His heart still ached for Way. Heckled never undo the hurt that Drew had caused. But he knew that the worst had passed. For once, Michael could breathe easy, knowing that justice had been served. He glanced at Way standing there, brave, and unshaken. In that moment, Michael was filled with an overwhelming sense of pride. This was his son. This was that child who had suffered under Drew's manipulation. And yet here he was, standing tall, speaking the truth with a courage far beyond his years. Michael could feel the power of wise actions settle deep in his chest. This child, the one Drew had tried so hard to break, was now the one Woe had given Michael the strength to fight for what was right. It was a victory not just for Michael, but for Wei too. Wei had proven that he wasn't just a victim of Drew's cruelty. He was a survivor. And more than that, he had become a beacon of justice, a symbol of resilience that had carried Michael through the dark minutes. Michael knew without a doubt Wei would grow up to be someone as strong, someone who would never let Nian silence his truth. As Michael took a deep breath, he realized that this was more than just a legal victory. It was the restoration of the bond between father and son. It was a moment of healing that had been long overdue. A chance for Michael to protect his family and ensure that they would never have to face the darkness that Drew had pretended their lives again. And as he looked at Wei, he felt a sense of peace settle in his heart. Despite the pain and the struggle, they had made it through. They had come out other side stronger, more united, and ready to face whatever the future might bring. For now, Michael knew that battle had been won, and that was Sino, as Drew and Willow stood in the courtroom, the weight of their actions pressing down on them. There was no escaping the truth that had been exposed. Wise testimony, delivered with the innocent courage only a child could muster, had shattered the walls of deception. They had so carefully constructed. The truth was laid bare for very own to see, and the room felt suffocating with the weight of it. Drew could no longer hide behind his manipulative tactics, nor could Willow continue to support him in the face of undeniable evidence of his cruelty. Drew, once a man regarded as an admirable figure, someone respected by many, a man Woe had fought for what he believed in, was now a shadow of the person he once was. The very image of him as a hero in the eyes of the public had been ripped away, revealing the monster lurking beneath. His actions, driven by selfishness and a thirst for control, had stripped him of any moral high ground. He was no longer the man people thought they knew, and the courtroom was now filled with nothing but disdain for him. The truth about Drew was far darker than anyone had imagined. And as the pieces of his deception fell into place, it became painfully clear there was no way back for him. His betrayal was too deep, his actions too unforgivable. Willow, who had once believed in Drew's sincerity, now found herself trapped in the web of lies they had both woven. Her face flushed with shame, realizing that she, too, had been complicit in allowing Drew to manipulate and deceive her, as well as everyone else around her. The support she hadn't offered, Drew felt like a distant Mori, replaced by the harsh reality that her loyalty had been misplaced. Theckertrum's gaze was unforgiving, and she was left with nothing but that knowledge that her blind trust had cost him all dearly. There was no escaping the consequences of what they hadn't. There was no more room for denial or defense. Michael stood firm, the full weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He had fought hard for Thismom, for the chance to protect his son from the harm Drew had caused. It was not just about winning in theft. It was about preserving the integrity of his family, safeguarding love and trust he had built with Wei. When Wei had spoken the truth, Michael had been filled with a mixture of pride because his son had found courage to stand up against Drew's manipulation, sorrow because it meant facing the painful reality of what had been done to his family. With Theckort's decision, Michael felt a sense of relief flood through him. But it wasn't a simple feeling of victory. It was a deeper, more profound relief, knowing that justice had been served. Knowing that his son was no longer under the emotional thumb of someone so destructive. The battle for his family's peace was over, And though the scars oft past would never completely fade, Michael could now look forward with a renewed sense of hope. The damage Drew had caused was irreversible. But in that meant, Michael knew that the most important thing was that Way was safe and the family that Michael had fought so hard to protect could begin to heal. Michael's triumph in the courtroom was not only a victory for justice, but also a victory for love and protection. In the face of Drew's treachery, Michael had remained steadfast in his commitment to his family. His fight was never about revenge. It had always been about safeguarding the emotional well-being of his children, especially Way. Watching Flaw hold Drew accountable for his actions was a confirmation that Michael had done everything in his power to ensure that his family would be free from the emotional manipulation that Drew had inflicted. The look in Way's eyes, that quiet resilience, reassured Michael Faith had done the right thing. His son had been spared from the manipulation and control that Drew had tried so hard to impose. And Michael could finally breathe easy, knowing that his family could move forward. In that courtroom, with the verdict delivered, Michael was not just a man who had won a legal battle. He was a father who had successfully protected his children from harm. This was more than a legal victory. It was the triumph of a father's love. Testament to the lengths he would go to ensure his children's well-being. As he glanced at Way standing there with the courage of a man far older than his years, Michael knew this battle had been worth every moment of struggle. It wasn't just about winning, it was about doing what was right. And in that moment, Michael was more certain than ever that he had. As the courtroom emptied, and the echoes of the judge's final decisions still lingered in the air, Michael felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The battle he had fought, not just in the courtroom, but in his heart, was over. Drew's manipulations had been exposed for all to see, and justice had been served. But beyond the legal victory, Michael knew that what truly mattered was the healing that would now begin for his family. Way, his son, had been given the strength to speak the truth, and in doing so, had shown more courage than Nonyan could have imagined. It was a moment of profound clarity for Michael. His son was no longer the victim of Drew's emotional cruelty. Way was free, and Michael could protect him from the harm that had been inflicted upon him. As he looked at his son standing beside him, Michael could feel the depth of their bond. It was unbreakable, stronger than ever. Though the road ahead would not be easy, there would be scars to heal and emotions to mend. Michael knew that they had overcome the greatest challenge they would ever face together. Drew's reignite manipulation and control had come to an end. But Michael's role as a father was far from over. He would continue to be the protector, the guide, and the unwavering source of love that we needed. For Willow and Drew, their paths should have verged. The weight of their actions had left them with nothing but the bitter reality of their choices. Drew had lost everything: his reputation, his integrity, and the trust of those he once held close. Willow, too, would have to reckon with the consequences of her decisions, knowing that her blind loyalty had caused her dearly. In the end, both of them were left to face the fallout from their betrayal, while Michael could move forward, knowing that despite everything, he had done what was right. As Michael and Way walked out of the courtroom side by side, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he knew they would face it together. There was no greater victory than Theon he had won today. The victory of love, protection, and the unshakable bond between father and son. The past was behind them now, and the future held nothing but promise. With his family intact and justice served, Michael knew that no matter what came next, they would be ready to face it together, stronger, united, and unbreakable. What a whirlwind of emotion, betrayal, and bombshell revelations. Monday's episode promises to change the lives of Port Charles residents forever. Will Michael recover from Sasha's revelation? Will Nina's secrets destroy her credibility? And is this really the end for Curtis and Portia? One thing's for sure, General Hospital is just getting started. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to GH Updates for your daily dose of drama. We'll be right here, bringing you every twist, every turn, and every unforgettable moment. Until next time, stay tuned, Port Charles fans.